basically I will start and I will go to this online drug trades topic. So basically, I'm not aware. Have you ever read something about it or not? Perhaps in the press, because it's kind of a popular topic now. Lots of journalists, lots of press is tackling this substance trade online, drug trade online, and so on. So basically, what they lack, what they miss, is that they basically got to Telegram, perhaps social media, but this is only one part of trading drugs online. We have, of course, this is the ClearNet side. So you definitely have some sites online like social media or, for example, this messaging apps that you can buy drugs, and I will discuss these today, of course, as well. But you have the second side, Darknet. So maybe a good question would be: have you ever browsed Darknet for some purposes, perhaps? So did you? For research purposes, perhaps?
Research purposes.
Research purposes. Yeah, this is
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry. So, yeah, you have plenty of myths surrounding Darknet, actually, of course. You have some myths about you can hire assassins online and such bullshit, right? Basically, it's not true. It's like, and actually, there are some researchers that study whether you can buy, you can hire some hitmans on the Darknet. It's not true, actually, of course. Lots of scams, lots of fake sites. It's a cyber crime to scam this, right? So this is actually, of course, it's not true. But of course, Darknet is actually used for trading drugs. This is kind of, I think, basic application of Darknet. Of course, data, stolen documents, and so on. This is also Darknet. But of course, I will be discussing Darknet in terms of drug trade.
So Darknet means that you cannot identify the user, am I right?
Basically, more complicated. Actually, if you want, I will be browsing Darknet today a bit. Basically, it means using the Tor browser, which in theory, it is about anonymizing the traffic, so no one can track your IP numbers. But of course, it's not that simple. It's more complicated in terms of whether, if you want to be fully anonymous, it's more complicated. You should probably use a good, also perhaps some kind of a copy of this system like Tails or something like this. So it's more complicated. I will be discussing this today, even more. So let me just skip this for now, and I will be discussing this later. So basically, you have this like ClearNet and Darknet division. So you can buy drugs using ClearNet or Darknet, but of course it's much more complicated. It's much more nuanced. You have users who use both. They use multiple markets simultaneously. We have participants that they have different roles. For example, they buy in the Darknet, they sell in the ClearNet because they are kind of really want to make profit, right? So this is, of course, much more complicated. Some of these places are more into relations, into interactions with different users, with the communities. Some of these places are not. And of course, I will be discussing all these issues today, definitely. So let me just start that this is like quite an extensive research field at this point. And I would say that it spans around 10 years, a decade. And early focus, of course, before 2016, we had some research on these kind of web shops. Maybe you are that old that you remember these brick and mortar shops with designer drugs in Poland, for example. This was like maybe 15, 20 years ago, something like this. You can actually, you could buy designer drugs, in Polish it's dopalacze, in these brick and mortar shops. We had this. Of course, it was forbidden, and these people moved online. These people started their web pages, their web shops, and at some point, this was also forbidden. So they kind of moved on, and they kind of used Darknet now, perhaps. But also, there were some studies on these web pages, these designer drugs, NPCs, the so-called new psychoactive substances, and so on. But I would say that this kind of modern field, this kind of this something I will be discussing today is like 10 years, perhaps. This research is it started 10 years ago. And the starting point was this establishment of the first ever crypto market on the dark web, which was called Silk Road. And the Silk Road was established by Ross Ubri. This is like a famous American US hacker, trader, basically a criminal, I would say. Of course, he was arrested in 2015. The Silk Road was closed. Donald Trump, during his second term, he kind of used his act of mercy, and now he's a free guy. So he was also involved in some cryptocurrency scams. I would say not a nice person generally, but he established this Silk Road, which was like the first ever crypto market on the dark web. And this was, of course, extensively studied. Despite being closed, the crypto markets like spread all over. We have plenty of crypto markets. They are very popular. If you want to buy drugs online, I would say you would probably want to use some of the crypto markets that are out there. It's very safe. I will be discussing this today further on. I would say that the usual time that the crypto market is active is like 2 years. It has been shut down by law enforcement agencies, but of course, it does not mean that the people are being arrested. It's just like the law enforcement agencies are very successful in terms of blocking the sites, but they do not secure the servers. They do not arrest people. These people move on to different crypto markets. They are actually quite active on different sites. So yeah, the crypto markets was like the turning point. It started 10 years ago. It is still being continued because of course this is still active phenomenon. Researchers are still trying to study what is being sold and so on. But there is this recent shift, and this is social media. Of course, social media is something new. Around 4 perhaps years, people started to ask themselves, what are the how are social media used in terms of drug trade? And of course, this is quite popular. You probably heard about this. Today, this is Telegram, but this was also TikTok, this was also Instagram, and so on. Of course, plenty of methodological challenges here. Very fragmented, very unstable environments, and you will see it further on. Partial visibility of these practices, right? Of course, this is like an illicit drug trade, so this is partially visible. This is kind of sometimes marginal, ephemeral. This is problematic in terms of studying these spaces. So I think that I could say there's a huge need for this mixed and adaptive methods, and I will try to indicate this also today. Of course, as with different social phenomena, these are being studied from different perspectives, from different perspectives. I would say that drug trade is highly interdisciplinary approach, highly interdisciplinary field. You can have like sociological research there that study the broader sociological context, all these processes, social processes that are taking place. Culture studies also try to tackle drug trade online. What are the meanings ascribed to substances, to drug trade by users? Of course, criminology. This is like a huge thing there. It is basically studying drug trade online as an illegal behavior and studying what is being sold, how much is being sold for, how much money people spend, and so on. This is something that is not that interesting for me, and I will be mentioning this as well today. Of course, plenty of theoretical approaches. I could say that you will see, from my narrative, you will see what kind of theoretical approaches are there we can use here. It's mostly about studying the social interactions, capital, competences of users, trust, risks that are connected with studying, of course, with the scene, with the culture, and so on. But as always, as with a good research paper, there's always this kind of a literature review. And I want to just give you a glimpse of this, because we have plenty of literature on studying drug trade online, plenty of these kind of classical papers that are started the field and so on. And I would say that one of these very first paper is the paper from 2016, like 10 years ago now. by Barrett and Aldrich. Crypto markets. About crypto markets. Everything you always wanted to know about drug crypto markets. It's an editorial for the special issue of International Journal of Drug Policy. Actually, if you want to read about drug trade online, I would say that International Journal of Drug Policy is the venue for you to study, because this is like the most influential journal in terms of studying drug trade online. Of course, the journal tackles lots of issues, but one of these issues is also drug trade online. So there was this paper by Barrett and Aldrich, Australian researchers. Actually, Barrett is Australian and Aldrich is from the UK. So they studied the Silk Road, the previously mentioned Silk Road, the first ever crypto markets that was out there. Also, when it comes to social media, one of these first founding papers, also from International Journal of Drug Policy, was Moyle et al. It's a really nice name, a catchy name again. Drugs for Trade, hashtag Drugs for Trade, an exploration of the use of social media and encrypted messaging apps to supply and access drugs. And what they did quite a simple research. They actually just did a survey. They did a survey. They sampled the Reddit users from this very specific channel, drugs, and they sampled. They studied 358 people, users, and they showed, of course, plenty of different results. But one of these results was that people basically use Snapchat 76%. Instagram 21%, like this is like the messaging app. It does not exist any longer. It's defunct now. It was it allowed you to encrypt messages really easily, and it was really for those who us that wanted privacy. It was a really nice messaging app. It does not exist anymore. So as you can see, there is no Telegram here. So this kind of really popular now. It's very popular now. Snapchat 76% was the top choice back then. It's 2008, 2019.
No, the paper was, the research was later, I think.
Sorry?
The research was in which year?
2019. 2019. So
Because it's published. I don't think that.
yeah, so it's probably a bit earlier. Yeah. So considering that actually International Journal of Drug Policy, this is a really nice journal, in fact, because when you submit, actually they were really strict in terms of reviews and so on. 1 month and it's been reviewed. So
Oh, good journal.
yeah. Till 19.
I will remember.
Yeah. But they are very selective. Absolutely,
Yeah.
they are very selective. But let me just say that after 2019, when the social media started, the social media thread started in research, of course, we had plenty of research concerning different social media. And I don't want to bore you here because, of course, I could discuss all this research here today. So let me give you some glimpses of research from concerning different social media. For example, drug dealing on TikTok by Larsen, 2023. They show that people use TikTok to trade drugs. And they studied, basically, they used the net ethnography, the digital net ethnography for 7 weeks. They studied posts, profiles, and they show that TikTok is basically an advertising space. And it's not that people use TikTok to trade drugs, but they kind of use it to advertise different channels. So the vendor, the dealer may use TikTok to spread the word about his other channels. So it's more about marketing, and it's more about algorithms and using the algorithmic power to advertise, to amplify visibility, and so on. 2023, from dealing to influencing, back and harder. It's a really nice paper, actually. They used also ethnography, visual and ethnographical analysis of posts on Instagram, and they studied Swedish dealer profiles, 60 dealer profiles from Sweden, 70 profiles of influencers from US and Canada. And what they showed is that basically it all depends, the trade depends. They showed that actually Swedish dealers use Instagram actually to trade drugs, but it's very transactional oriented. So they want to be anonymous. They want to have these own cues that they trade drugs. It's not that obvious. So what they showed is that it's highly related to, of course, the environment, the social, the policy of a given country, the social norms that surround substances, and so on. And they show that in Canada and US, people that advertise drugs on Instagram, they actually are kind of influencers. So they kind of really combine this kind of lifestyles, lifestyle characteristic of their profile with trading drugs. So they kind of, for example, show that they are trading drugs or using drugs, they do drugs, and how it relates to their parenting, fitness, and so on. So it's more like this kind of digital intimacy they try to create around drugs. So, and of course, they studied, this is kind of interesting because highly important, that they studied the users from California. So it was already the marijuana, and they studied cannabis users. So this is kind of important. So of course, marijuana is legal it's decriminalized it's legal actually, it's legal in California. So this is obvious why it happened, right? Rolando et al. 2023, Telegram and harm reduction. This is something that will differ from my own study. Rolando showed that with his co-authors that Telegram has this potential for harm reduction. So it's not only about trading drugs in transactions, but it's also about discussing potential harms and so on, how to properly use drugs, properly, of course, in brackets. And I might say that they stress that Telegram has this potential for reinforcing harm reduction, which is, it's kind of really, I would discuss this because I do not agree with this. I am opposing this view, actually. And very last, Van der Sanden, Discord drug markets, which is highly interesting because, for example, in my research, we did not find anything on Discord, on Polish Discord. Actually, they did find something on Discord, which is a kind of really service that is a social platform that is more popular within gamers, for example. So they did use interviews and observation. Then they found out that Discord is also being used to trade, and they identified the so-called high-tier channels, which are closed, which are based on this vouching reputation, and they are more secure, and low-tier channels, which are very open, public, but related to scams. You may wonder how the direct right relates to national differences, whether there are some differences within societies, nations, countries. Absolutely, and we have plenty of research. Maybe not that plenty. This is kind of really understatement. Not plenty of research being done on that. Actually, I did research on this myself. I don't know. I will discuss this. But one of these first studies is, for example, Demant et al. A very pronounced name in this study, drug trades online, Demant from Copenhagen. Drug dealing on Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram. And what they show that in Scandinavia, within Scandinavia, these practices of trading drugs online differ. For example, in Denmark and Iceland, people use Facebook groups, like open public groups, and Messenger, which was kind of shocking for us because it's kind of too open for us. How was the explanation there? They explained that in Denmark and Iceland, people do not believe that the law enforcement agencies are actually successful in anything. So they can kind of do everything online. There is every illicit activity is fine. It's fine. And of course, other issues are also involved, like these are more tolerant societies, more liberal, open, progressive in terms of substances, right? This is obvious. But Norway, which also seems kind of open society, it's different. It's more concealed. Tor, dark web, Snapchat, which has this hidden messages, of course, why people there are super cautious because they believe the law enforcement agencies are very successful in catching criminals. This was their explanation. Sweden is in between. No, Finland, which is kind of interesting for me, but I will mention it later. But maybe you wonder, are social media platforms really kind of allow for all this? And if you wonder, there's this really nice paper, which is a review of social media platform policies. regarding cannabis promotion, marketing, and sales. They only studied cannabis, but we may actually relate to all these substances because it's similar. And the truth is that it's really it's like very ambiguous because, of course, all these terms and conditions, they kind of forbid you to trade drugs, and actually it's kind of understandable, but they do not forbid users to discuss drugs. They do not forbid user-generated content on drugs, which makes this already ambiguous because, of course, people may tend to use different strategies to trade drugs and disguise this as kind of discussing, as kind of relating user-generated content, which is not trading drugs, but something else. They use, of course, emojis, they use coded language, they use all of these strategies to make it more secret. And on the other hand, it's also ambiguous because these platforms are super interesting that they tend to see something as not allowed, and they turn a blind eye to something else. Because, for example, if you look at all these cannabis influencers, all these people who just show substances, it's kind of obvious that these are potential dealers, drug vendors. But there's, for example, different harm reduction initiatives. Like, for example, in Poland, we have these SYN initiative. Actually, they exist now, but they are really, they had a huge backlash from Facebook. They had a very active Facebook account. The SYN is like a harm reduction initiative. In Polish, it's Społeczna Inicjatywa Narkotykowa, which they try to actually implement proper use of drugs, help people who use drugs, who abuse drugs, and so on. And they were blocked by Facebook. This was like a huge case. They sued Facebook. They won eventually, but it took them several years. And this was a huge backlash for them. And nobody knows why actually Facebook chose SYN to block them, to ban them. There is this famous channel YouTuber, Mestosław. His mission is to also promote harm reduction, promote proper use. He also reports that he has struggles with platforms. And on the other hand, they turn a blind eye to these illicit practices. This is unbelievable. So they basically enable drug market visibility, I would say. But this was like an introduction, a bit long perhaps, but I think necessary to discuss my own research project. And this project is financed by the National Science Center in Opus 22 program. And the title is Rhizome Networks, the Circulation of Meaning and Content and the Offline Context of Online Drug Trading. And we used different methods. This is like a project that it's an ongoing project, I would say. We are studying Darknet and ClearNet since 2023, and there's one more year to go, and we are using qualitative and quantitative methods. For the quantitative methods, we are using big data analysis, posts that are being scrapped from dark web, from social media, and so on, from forums, or from web forums, and so on. We are using basically, of course, statistics. We are using natural language processing, and you will see the results in a second. For the qualitative component, these are basically ethnography, digital ethnography, and interviews with the users, with the sellers, with also educators, with addictive therapists, and so on, addiction therapists, and so on. And for the, I will be discussing some selected platforms on the dark web and on the social media on the ClearNet. But I must say that basically we scrapped a lot from the internet, a lot. We have, I would say, millions of posts from different services, different online spaces that people actually not only use to trade drugs, or perhaps some of these are even not used for trade drugs, but basically discuss drugs. The most famous Polish forum, Hyper Forum, which is around 300,000 users now, I think. Of course, the number is based on from the website. This is taken from the website, so we never know what is the actual number of active users at this moment. But this is like a very popular Polish forum for discussing substances. We have Dopek EU, which is basically a website that is site that advertises different web shops related to dopalacze, to designer drugs, and also discusses designer drugs. Neurogroup, where people discuss their different trips, their different ways of course, experiencing taking drugs and substances. And we also scrape Mestoswap, we scrape YouTube, we scrape, of course, messaging apps if permissible and when possible. So we have plenty of data, I might say. But I will discuss some of these more closely. First of all, I will discuss the Cebulka, so the Polish dark web. I would say maybe a crypto market, but it's not crypto market per se, because crypto markets are more structured and they are very specific. This is more like it functions as like a crypto market, but it's more like if you look at the affordances and the architecture, it's more like a forum. It's not like a messaging board. So the only difference is that it's highly, of course, it's about substances. If you want to see Cebulka, it's very easy actually, because I'm a logged in user now. So I will have this access to this hidden layer, I might say. So it's, but if you want to browse, you can browse easily. It's like it's open for everybody to browse. So you just have to find the address. It's not that obvious, but you will find it easily using some kind of a simple Google search. You will probably find it sooner or later. So it's basically like an eBay, Allegro for drugs. You have plenty of course, threads that relate to drugs, to trading drugs. Cebulka is devoted not only to drugs, I might say. You will find data dumps there from this famous cybercrime attacks. Like, for example, maybe you remember Alap attack for this fame. They stole this data from patient data. Niebezpiecznie, they reported that the data is on Cebulka. Yes, it was on Cebulka. You can find it. You can easily buy it from Cebulka. So not only drugs, but the main feature is drugs, definitely. So it's like
Very active today.
Today?
Weekend, yeah.
Yeah, it's a week. No,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't work like that.
Oh.
Because Cebulka usually is very slow.
Oh.
If you want to buy drugs for a party today, I would say Telegram is the choice.
Thank you for recommendation.
How you can translate this word?
What?
This word, how you can translate it?
Which?
Yeah.
Onion, because it's like relates to Tor. Yeah.
Yes.
So it relates to the Tor browser, of course, the Onion. So it's maybe I will just browse bits because it will be easier to explain. So of course it's like a forum, right? Which people advertise. They have this promoted sales, and for example, there is this famous bud guys, which they only trade weed basically. They only trade grass. So it's really nice in terms of visuals and how they advertise. They have, of course, full description, photos. What is the price? The quality. Describe the quality. How you can buy. Whether this is sent to you by InPost. It's an InPost.
Yeah.
It uses InPost. Basically 95% of deliveries takes place by InPost, the Polish parcel office.
By InPost?
Yes, of course.
Yes. It
So-
started during the pandemic, actually.
Yes, maybe even earlier, because Cebulka is also this is like a very interesting case in terms of that this it lasts for 16 years now, for 13 years. In terms of the functionalities and features it presents now, 13 years now, which is kind of really interesting case because, as I mentioned before, like for the crypto markets, the average year time they function is 2 years, and they are being shut down by law enforcement agencies. For the Cebulka, nobody really cares, or they don't want to care. I don't know. I don't know what is the problem here. Because, of course, this was not our question. We did not really wonder what is the reason why law enforcement agencies they do not care about Cebulka. What the important thing is that I forgot to mention that of course we wanted to study all these drug trade online in this kind of social culture as a social culture phenomena. So we are not more into how many substances, what are the account, what are the money involved, which is actually we did some of this analysis, but it's really actually hard to actually study because of course it's more about estimating, modeling based on this kind of reports that people actually they report what are the amounts they buy, the transactions that are successful or not. So we could try to have this kind of data and estimate and see these trends, but we did not really care about this. What we wanted to do is kind of see this social culture, this drug trade as a social culture phenomena, and I will be discussing this in this from this point of view. So this is kind of really like a regular Allegro, right, for drugs. We have these prominent users here, like Bad Guys is one of these users, Mango, which is a kind of really interesting case, a strong believer that the mushrooms, the psilocybin mushrooms can heal depression, which is kind of really true because, of course, the mushrooms are being now tested for healing this kind of depression that is not, the drugs, the standard drugs do not work. So it's kind of true to the point, but the problem is that it's being actually kind of tested at this moment. So it's kind of the addiction therapists, they use psilocybin mushrooms, but it's very complicated in terms of healing patients with depression. They are taking psilocybin mushrooms, they are observing people for 2 days, for example. And this kind of Mango guy, he only sells LSD, DMT, which is also a very potent psychedelic substance, changa, T2CB, mescaline, and so on. These are basically all psychedelics. Sorry. So he believes that he helps people by curing them from their depression, and he reports that he's very successful. We kind of interviewed him. He's very successful. People come back to him, report that are being healed, and so on and so on. So yeah, he probably has some photos here, some mushrooms, and a description, a very long description. He does these pills, and so Cebulka is very safe. If you want to buy drugs and be very safe, secure, Cebulka is your choice.
Why is it safe?
Because you go through Tor. You install Tor in the browser from internet and go to Tor, and Tor makes your connection from 3 or 4 servers from abroad.
It's not only Tor, actually. It's more complex because I would say it's about this whole philosophy that these users are kind of mad about. It's the so-called operational security, and it's also about technical stuff. So using Tor browser, using the WPN, using also Tails, perhaps. It's not only about Tor and the WPN. Of course, it suffices. You will probably be safe, but this kind of operational security is even more using Tails as a kind of really false system that it will disallow every in every external movement. It's only temporary system. Also, it's about this kind of informal stuff, not technical stuff, as for example, of course, being highly aware of passwords, of this is being ciphered. If you want to buy drugs, you have to use the software that is called PGP. You will find detailed instructions on Cebulka. It's very clearly described what you need to do step by step. You need to install the ciphering software. You need to decipher and cipher each communication with the vendor. So it's about these small details. It's about, of course, protecting your identities. They are very into also concealing the language. For example, they change the language. Do you know how the Yoda from Star Wars speaks? Yeah, some of them actually they do these kind of reverse Yoda style language. So this is more complex in terms of how obsessed they are in terms of security, securing their anonymity and so on. And I will be discussing this more because we call these kind of elite users. This was one of the results of the interviews. But of course, we also scrape the data. We of course everything was super ethical. I would probably need maybe I would need to start from this. That it was super ethical. We had these approvals from external ethical review boards. We asked the administration of Cebulka whether we could scrape the data. They agreed. They even let us scrape more because there is this system that if you browse too much, it will log you off. So they actually allowed us to scrape more. They gave us this access. So we have hundreds of thousands of posts from Cebulka. These were analyzed textually, thematically, visually. I would say that we did this ethnography, huge ethnography. It lasted around 2 years now, and lots of internal report notes, research notes, and so on. And the step 2 was interviews. After scraping, after observation, we did interviews, and it was kind of really interesting. I think methodologically interesting because we wonder whether we should start the interviews by posting the so-called recruitment post. So basically, you are a researcher and we are doing this project and we want to ask you some questions. Well, or whether we should contact the administrator, and we chose the second path. So, and we kind of also named it putting control of the research process in the hands of the community. And I must describe this more closely because it was kind of really unusual because there is this guy who decided all of it. One of these administrators is called, his name is Ralph, and he was kind of guy that was, I don't know, assigned to us or something like this. He decided who is being interviewed at any given moment. So he, for example, picked 2 nicknames we should contact with and ask for in the interview. And the interviews were usually some of these interviews were all these interviews were online interviews. Most of these interviews were interviews that took place using this ciphering system on Cebulka, these private messages. Some of these users agreed to talk with us online, but not many. And basically, what he did, this Roberts guy, he chose the 2 names. We did the interviews or not. We contacted him again, asked for 2 names again, and so on. And it lasted for ages. It was like a very long and time-consuming. But on the other hand, it was like a very super ethical, I believe. But of course, we also kind of lost this control over this process because we didn't actually know what was the reason he chose these particular 2 guys' names. When he was asked about these reasons, he stated that it is about the activity of these users and the internal knowledge. What is the internal knowledge, we asked? Blah, blah, blah. He didn't really precise, he didn't explain. So it was kind of really awkward, a very awkward process, but we didn't see any other way to ask these guys about all these issues. And actually, some of these guys are famous criminals, cyber criminals. For example, we did interview this Diablo de Villius. He's a guy who he's not only trading drugs, but he's also a hacker. And he's known for spoofing attacks on politicians. Maybe you did this Supervisor documentary about him. He was kind of really, he's a famous persona in this kind of world of hackers. So actually, we didn't see any other way we could actually interview these people. And we kindly describe this process in this publication, case study directory on the Polish Darknet, releasing control over the research process. If you're interested in full in this, you will find it in this Routledge Practice in Digital Ethnography book. This is a chapter in this monography. And we stated that ethnography should not only actively engage with the community, because we engage obviously, but also give that community some control over the research. The idea is for members to actively shape the process, especially when this means strengthening ethical integrity and facilitating access to communities that would otherwise be elusive. And of course, this was the case. The community that is highly elusive, that is hard to reach community. So we kind of wanted to release the control over the research process. It has plenty of traps. For example, my PhD students, my master students that were involved in this project as scholars, they kind of, I think, at some point started to identify with them, with this study community, because when we discussed this research together, they kind of stated at one point, this guy, I really like him. Like, I know he trades drugs, but he's such a nice guy.
What's the girl?
Like a guy, it's a girl or male. The guy is like German, right?
Oh, yeah.
So basically, what a nice person. Like, I know he did this hacking attacks. He's a cyber criminal, but he is such eloquent. He speaks so nicely. He knows all this stuff. He's such a, he's talkative and so on. I like him.
And also maybe they identified.
Yeah, they identify. Absolutely. If you browse these communities, you see how they discuss all these things. They seem so normal.
Or maybe identified their moral values.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Especially that we interviewed and they kind of really talk about their personal lives at some point. And I might say that, of course, Cebulka is the only Polish space when it comes to trading drugs on the dark web. But nevertheless, it's kind of a niche thing. When I will compare it to Telegram, which is a massive thing, which is kind of everybody uses Telegram to buy drugs today, the Cebulka is a niche market compared to Telegram. And I would say that there is some community over there. Absolutely. Of course, we have plenty of users that use Cebulka just for transactions, just to buy drugs. They log in, they buy, they basically log off, right? Also, if you want to buy, this is like something I should mention, definitely. It's a crypto market in terms that you use cryptocurrencies there. So you use Monero, you don't use Bitcoin. So you have to have also a cryptocurrency to buy drugs. And they are using this escrow. Some of you asked, well, why is it secure? There is a reason. One of the reasons is that there is the escrow there. So escrow means that there's this middleman who holds the money until you will receive the drugs, and you will confirm the quality of the drugs. If you don't confirm the quality, you don't receive drugs, the buyer, the seller will not receive money, the cryptocurrency. So there is an escrow system there. And of course, it's also based on reputation, which is interdimensional. Like quality means quality of drugs. Like there are reviews about drugs, whether these drugs are good quality, bad quality. It's all based, of course, on these experiences. Although some users do those test labs, they test drugs. And quality also means whether you ask how is it that it's imposed. So one of the reasons it is considered quality is that you don't feel anything strange when you are close to impost. Like you don't feel the smell. You don't smell it, right? So it's securely packed. So the package is good. Also, how fast you will receive. Usually, it's several days. It depends also on drugs, whether you want something special or not. So of course, it's like an Allegro. It's like an eBay. You basically evaluate sellers. So for some of the users, it's only about this transaction and that's it. But for some of these users, it's more, definitely. So I have this paper. It's a single author paper in Information Communication in Society, which tackles the issue of the community. Is it a community or not? So basically, I would say there is a small amount of users like that are highly engaged in this Cebulka, and they discuss all this issue related to drugs, not only drugs, but how this Cebulka works, harm reduction issues, and so on. And these users are definitely lower part of the there are this not many of these users, but what is also interesting is that despite being like an egalitarian community, they believe they are an egalitarian community because they are highly into libertarianism. Like they are believe that this is in a society you should have every possible freedom. So if you want to take drugs, you take drugs. The state does not interfere. It's like libertarian values. But despite these users stressing this libertarianism, this is a highly hierarchical community. Like this guy rules them all. He's like the guy that decides about who is being banned, why, what kind of users are designated for the interviews. So, and of course, plenty of other roles in this community. Of course, plenty of other users that are also influential. They have this also secret areas. They discuss all these other users, whether we should ban them or not, or something like this. And this, the interviews were quite informative with the users, and we actually named these users, Cebulka users, as elite users. Not only these highly engaged users, but in general. I mean, the users who buy drugs using Cebulka. Several reasons here. First of all, they made this clear distinction between themselves and the people who buy drugs on the clear web and on streets, and they believe they are better basically because this is the second point here. They have greater knowledge. They know more about drugs, the effects, the harm reduction. They are more aware compared to people who use on Telegram, on the street, and so on. They also believe that Cebulka offers more in terms of quality drugs, limited selections. If you want something specific, you want ayahuasca from Mexico, from Peru, be my guest. You want something specific in terms of marijuana, you want specific sativa, indica. You have everything there, right? So they also self-identify as experts and called connoisseurs. And the guy who traded who cured depression, for example, he self-identified as kind of connoisseurs of these substances. Plenty of these people also believe they are connoisseurs of certain substances. They know everything about these substances because they used so much, or they did so much, or they just basically sell so they know. Also, which is kind of a really nice point here, 5, the belief that the Darknet attracts people with a higher social status. And I will give you some quotes and it will be visible. And the 6th point here, separating the Darknet persona from the real life. And I will give you some quote in a second, so you will also see what I mean. So, but I will go, but to also explain it a bit more, let me look at some quotes. So the distinction between the dark web and trafficking on the clear web and street trading. So for example, they say dealers are not friends. There are bad people who profit from addiction, people who are willing to give you product on participation so that they can later harass you, threaten you, and charge you extra interest. And of course, they spoke about street dealers. So the street dealers are bad people.
Not us.
Hooded people, and so on. So we are one these kind of very strong guys with all these muscles. And on the dark web, you will not find such persona. Or, for example, that's why I also chose to do some online shopping, because I think it helps me avoid direct contact with such a strange people. It's avoiding this kind of contact. I feel like these darknet purchases are well thought out, while everyday purchases are more impulsive. Actually, I think it's true. Spur of the moment, darknet is less linked to substance abuse issues. I mean, this was highly debatable, I think. But in terms of spur of the moment, it's like, yeah, what I did mention, if you want to party today, Telegram is your choice, because of course, you have to think about what is the vendor you will choose on Cebulka, what is the delivery time, because it's usually 1 week, for example, or something like this. So it's more well thought of in this regard, of course. Category 2 and 3, knowledge, quality, and selection, definitely. Some of them said, for example, people who buy offline usually have no one to talk to about the substances in question. Stimulants and marijuana reign supreme on the streets. Few people care what they're actually snorting. From my observations, there are people online who pay more attention to the substances they consume, have greater knowledge have greater knowledge of how a given substance should look, smell, and work. And a second quote, in addition, the entire mystery shopping initiative, this is something I need to explain. The Cebulka administration, like these routes, they do this mystery shopping to control the users, the sellers. So they buy substances and they test substances to ensure quality. Like a community, right? Which led to sellers not being able to sell just anything, caused users to become more aware, and as a result, more demand. So the people are more demanding, they have more knowledge, they want more quality substances. So connoisseurs, I would say I have a very high level of awareness. My studies have prepared me somewhat for it. It's not about, he was a chemist, probably.
Ah, okay.
Or she, you don't know.
She had an,
Like a Breaking Bad.
yes.
Yeah. My studies have prepared me somewhat for it. It's not about the knowledge itself, but about the methods of acquiring and verifying knowledge. So it's based on scientific research. Therefore, I have an evidence-based approach, and I know that there are others who share it. This was very often, they stressed the evidence-based approach, that they read on journals, they read medical journals, and they have knowledge based on research. It offers the opportunity to explore alternative options for combating depression. This is the guy I was discussing, the Mango user. It offers the opportunity to explore alternative options for combating depression, which has led to dozens of people struggling with depression that doctors haven't been able to address, writing to me periodically. Some of these people, to maintain the results, order the products every 6 months or a year. So they come back to cure their depression. Higher social status. I mentioned that some of these users mentioned that Cebulka users are users of a higher social status. For example, some clients are in a such privileged position that they can't afford to hassle or fail transactions. These are business owners and established individuals. And the last thing they need is accusations of slander and stemming from their physical transaction and purchases. Or these are established people, businessmen, doctors, lawyers, politicians. This is my favorite group. They know what they want, quality, are communicative and reliable. They expect the same. These people tend not to buy offline for security and privacy reasons. When asked, how do you know that these people are doctors, lawyers, politicians? Because it's anonymous. So how do you know? They did not answer. So it's only speculation. We don't know, of course. But the truth is that they all stress this, that this is like elite, the elite of the elites of drug users. And separating persona, darknet persona, from real life identity, which is part of this operational security philosophy, which I mentioned before. So No one knows about my activities on the forum. I hide the substances I use from everyone. I conceal my income and what I do by creating a so-called legend. So this is kind of a Walter White from Breaking Bad. Actually, this could be it. I have a job, an occupation, a source of income, and a life outside as a life outside as a security umbrella. My activities are similar to an intelligence cover, and I take my duties very seriously. Some of these guys, this is the example here, they call themselves different names. One of them called themselves, I don't remember, one of these Pokemons. And here I have someone who called himself a Smurf. And here this photo of a Smurf. His account. Smurf has taken advantage of offers, and he called himself Smurf when he described himself, right? Smurf has taken advantage of offers, but he values a balanced lifestyle. Moderation, passions, and hobbies in real life as a priority.
Entrepreneur.
So yeah, he's an entrepreneur. He basically trades drugs, he sells drugs, and he's basically a normal guy. Yeah. Of course, marketing is a huge thing on Cebulka. It's like they have also this kind of a calling centers, maybe, so you can contact them every time you want. You have problem, please report. So they some of these sellers, they do want to, of course, have this kind of untouched reputation, that they are very reliable, they offer high quality. Each of these pictures have these kind of identification and so on. So it's very important. We did some big data analysis here, and it was kind of really obvious for us that it's kind of it relates. That the higher the rating, the higher the sales, the more the sales. It's all correlated, and of course, when it comes to sentiment, actually, it's not that obvious because most of these actually comments are about the negative. There are negative comments on substances about these traits, but it's kind of really, of course, also understandable when we look that people mostly they do kind of report all these scams or that they are not satisfied, right? Because it's similar to as we go to a doctor. If you are happy, we do not write a review. If we are unhappy, we write a review because we are unhappy. So the similar with probably with Cebulka. If you wonder what's there, actually, cannabis is like the most popular substance, but we also have plenty of other MDMA, cocaine, amphetamine, prescription drugs, a lot of prescription drugs. If you want to buy a drug, on every possible drug, on prescription drug, it's probably on Cebulka, LSD, some other ketamine, DMT, and psilocybin mushrooms, methamphetamine, and many designer drugs, plenty of substances. What is also interesting for us, we did this network analysis, and they are highly specialized in terms of cannabis and prescription drugs. So most of the vendors are actually they're trading cannabis, marijuana, and they only sell cannabis or they only sell prescription drugs. For other substances, they also sell more, right? So they can, for example, sell cocaine, amphetamine, MDMA, and other substances. We also did this comparison of three markets. We published this in an International Journal of Drug Policy. The paper is called Digital Drug Trading Ecologies in Context. What we did, we compared Cebulka with the Finnish market, Tsatsi, and the UK market, Nemesis. And these three markets, Tsatsi, the Finnish one, the UK Cebulka, the UK Nemesis and Cebulka, they do differ. Like Tsatsi, which is a dark web market, it's like more like a chat. It's like it's more local. It's definitely local, so it relates to different areas of Finland or different districts in Finnish cities, and it's more like real-time chat. So, for example, you basically have people who advertise them selling something now, today, within 1 hour. So it's more like Telegram, perhaps, and some other people who are interested, and they are basically meeting offline, or they are setting some point that the substances will be placed in a particular, for example, I don't know, there's a tree in a park, and there's a third tree from the third on the corner, something like this, right? So there's this specific point, and there is this substance that someone is taking this. So it's more local, it's more ad hoc, it's very fast. The Nemesis UK crypto market, it's already defunct. FBI seized it. It's very global, it's transnational market, and it's highly structural, it's very formal, it has the templates for what is being sold, what is the price, what is the shipping time, where is the vendor shipping to which countries. So it's very, very formal, very structured. No place for community there. Only reviews, stars, basic comments like reliable vendor or something like this. No discussions about harm reduction, no discussions about substances, experiences. Cebulka has, I mentioned, Cebulka has this community, users that are engaged in discussing these issues, experiences, qualities, harm reduction issues, it's there. So we also compared these kind of specializations and what is being traded on these sites. Basically, Cebulka, I mentioned Cebulka, they are very specializing in substances. It's not the same with Nemesis and Satsi. They are basically selling everything, these vendors. But what is similar is that they are into cannabis and prescription drugs. This is like the most popular substances are cannabis and prescription drugs. And this is the these are figures related to Nemesis. So we wanted to show that this is a transnational market. Actually, plenty of these directions. I won't discuss this in full, but just believe me that this is about locations that the vendors are sending drugs. So this is like the United Kingdom crypto market. So they also have this kind of local, of course, regional shipments. But for example, you can buy from, there were vendors which were selling to Australia, Poland as well. There are some vendors from Poland we could only suspect based on the reported shipments, right? So this is transnational, definitely. And what we did, we termed this as these ecologies. Paper is called Digital Drug Trading Ecologies. What we kind of really wanted to prove is that today's the literature is focused on these big crypto markets such as Nemesis, English language crypto markets that are highly standardized and formalized. But what we lack in the literature is studies of these smaller national, local markets, and we call these to study these, and we called these ecosystem as ecologies, dark web drug ecologies. We kind of understand this, that these architectures shape the sales, shape the communities, whether there is some kind of community, how the communication and trust issues are resolved within these communities. There's different models, right? We have local, hybrid, transnational, global markets, and we have definitely these local language, these markets in local languages are under research. We need more research on these local markets, such as Cebulka, for example, right? There is a screenshot from the Hydra Russian market. Actually, this is kind of an example that is contradictory here because, of course, Hydra Russian market, very famous market, one of the biggest, I think, was highly studied, actually, but this is quite easy to understand why. Russian market with lots of different strange stuff. So, yeah. And so these affordances of these sites actually are determining how the drug actually really looks, and we need to move beyond this English language crypto market centric research. But what about social media, Telegram? Yeah, this is definitely the thing at the moment, and we also studied this, and we started with Instagram. When it comes to social media, we started with Instagram, but we did not find much there. It's not that it's nothing there, but it's similar to the Bakken paper. we kind of saw this as if someone uses Instagram, it's more about only just these photos or profiles that are not that indicative of trade, but it's more marketizing different channels. But it's very niche, I would say. I would say that there was a time, like 4 years from now, that the Instagram was into trading drugs. It was more popular back then. We did find something, presenting some screenshots here of mostly from Instagram, but not much. What we see as a as something that dominates now is the Telegram. The Telegram, if you want to, if you are using Telegram, if you will start searching, you will basically start by writing some of the substances names. You will probably start. So you will see these channels. Maybe you will stumble upon some of these channels. Plenty of these channels actually that we studied was from Warsaw. And we actually also did this quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, of course, again. So when it comes to the data, we have around 500,000 messages from Telegram. And of course, this is kind of really hard to study because, again, there is this public area and the private groups. So you cannot scrape actually private groups. It's really hard. I don't know how to scrape it. My technical guys don't think we don't know. Maybe you know, I don't know. So what we did, we kind of scraped the public stuff. So it's highly limited. It's highly limited. So we have around 500,000 messages. And we, of course, this is not the case that we ask someone to scrape. This is like, it's happening. And we have around 1,500 channels, Telegram channels that we scraped. So it's highly difficult to analyze because of the language, because of the emojis, because of the codes you have to know. It's not that obvious. It's not that you will do an NLP and it will show you what is being traded, how substances, what is the cost of substances, and so on. It's actually really hard, but of course doable. You can actually do some kind of of course, preparation of the data and analysis. It's possible. We are doing this. And apart from this, we actually also did the interviews with the sellers again and with people who buy drugs using Telegram. And we did not actually interview this kind of ordinary, casual, recreational users. We actually, I would say that the interviewees were kind of the people with abusive problems, kind of with this abusive history. So they kind of abused drugs because we recruited them mostly from the addictive therapies. They kind of really helped us here at this kind of source. And what are the first conclusions here? This is actually an ongoing process now. This is something we are struggling with at this moment. I would say that Telegram is highly standardized, despite this is like really confusing at this first glance. It's really confusing. Maybe I could show you some channel, perhaps. I have this. For example, I have something like Koźmińskie słodycze, which is from Gdańsk and Gdynia, like three city candies, translate this, which is of course about, it's not about candies, of course, but about, well, candies, right? About candies, but different kind of candies. So it's basically, it's like a general chat. People do advertise. Maybe I will explain first and it will be clearer then. That when you look at when we can analyze these channels, we kind of saw that there are plenty of channels that are really short in terms of how they are functioning. Short time channels. So only top 5 channels, top 5 out of 1,500, top 5 channels contain 34% of all messages. So there are these kind of really big hubs for trading drugs. And top 10%, top 10 channels, sorry, contain 65% of all messages. And 25%, if I recall, had only 2 messages per channel, or 3, I don't remember. But for us, it means that there is this huge concentration in some of these areas. And there is also a second issue here. They are very volatile in terms of how long they exist. Some of these these channels with low number of posts are very volatile. They exist only a small, very, very quickly. They disappear very quickly, right? It's understandable. And this will be much. This will be confirmed, and this will be I will elaborate when I will discuss this qualitative layer of this research. So for now, only just realize that we have these huge hubs in terms of trading drugs. They are kind of standardized, because when you look at this, it may seem as a really chaotic communication, but we have these vendors that are very specific in terms of what they are selling, what is the shipment, and so on. We kind of see this as this infrastructure of visibility, and I will explain this in a second what I mean by this infrastructure of visibility. So communication is not about social interaction, definitely not. It's more like a functional flow of messages about just trading, buying drugs. And it's very quick. It's very quick. We also saw that we compared this faster and slower posting, how fast and how slow this posting is on this channel, and how regular or unregular it is. And of course, this faster posting is more regular also posting. So there are these huge hubs that people constantly write about substances. I want to buy something. Do you have something? And so on. And we kind of also divided these channels into these high activity irregular channels, the green ones. So there's this huge activity, very irregular, also very burst of activities. There is this moderate activity, more mixed variability channels, and these quiet channels that are very poor in terms of communication and posts. So this is kind of a market, definitely market, not a community. This is only about this transaction. And we call this infrastructures of visibility. And we have this paper in the Social Media and Society at this moment. It is being reviewed. I'm very hopeful that it will be positive. And we call this infrastructures of visibility. So there is no stable reputational system here. Of course, we have some back channels that are the so-called legged checks, because some of these vendors, sellers have these back channels, and you can actually report whether this is successful or not. But I will mention this in a second, that this could be a scam as well. So these legged checks are there, but the user actually, they may not pay attention to it. The actors are replaceable, definitely. We have plenty of people who are we have plenty of these channels that are very short time channels. People migrate, they have different channels all the time. So this is more about this temporal trust. So if the channel is kind of a hub, it exists longer, it is mostly reliable. It is, you can trust that this is not a scam or something like this. So we call this that this is more about temporal trust, more about visibility, communicational structural infrastructure of visibility. And we also, of course, have these interviews, which is discovering what is behind these hubs, what is behind these hubs, these transactions, and so on. And I think it's quite interesting because Telegram is, of course, dominating. It is a hub, but it's not that it's the only social media that is being used at this point. I think it's not. Of course, this is a qualitative layer on interviews, so we may just suspect that people are using this. Some of our interviewers said they are using Snapchat today as well. They are using, some of the users said they WhatsApp. course, different platforms as well. So this is more multiple platforms. This more multiple platform thing. We call this polymedia ecosystem, broader polymedia ecosystem of trading drugs on social media, clearing. What we also discovered is this hyper accessibility. Basically, this is happening constantly. This is like something that is constantly available. Users can switch channels. They are searching ad hoc. They want to party. They want to have drugs now. They are going to a different city. They don't know where to buy drugs from. They want to buy drugs. They use Telegram. They search. So it's very fast. It's ordinary. There is this point number 6 here, ambient illicity. This is related. Buying is perceived by users as something as they are buying like grocery or electronics or something like this. This is normal. They don't even really think about that this is illegal or illicit, that they are in a risk or something like this. Hybridity, which is about, this is interesting because when you are buying drugs on Cebulka, it's also physical, it's material in terms of parcel brokers. You have to go, you have to have the package, it's obvious. But in hybridity, in terms of Telegram, means something completely different. Basically, you are searching drugs on Telegram, and most of the deliveries are street delivery. So you are agreeing a point, you are meeting a vendor, and you are being handled substance. And you are paying by blink. Yeah, that's
In Mokot, you can see people doing it.
yeah, this is like, this is why this hybrid. It's like another way of contacting a vendor. When I was studying, my friends, I knew some people, they had some contacts, right? People were discussing where to buy drugs, like a student buy drugs or something like this, but nobody used apps, of course. It was more about, I know a guy who knows a guy and he knows a guy. And we maybe have a phone number and we are calling, right? What's happening, guys? And here we have like, oh, another channel. Okay, I want this and this. Come to this place, bleak, and it's this. That's it. We don't even know the guy. Something like this. Although it's not regular because of course it's more nuanced, I would say. And I will discuss this in a second. Why it's more nuanced. It's mostly nuanced because of the safety issues. Because safety is definitely constructed here. It's like users overestimate safeties because this safety mechanism. They believe that, for example, Telegram is very safe because it's we have this view of Telegram as safe because it's anonymous cipher. We know it's not true. We know Durov is now cooperating with European Union institutions. We know that the Russians are constantly infiltrating Telegram. So it's basically not safe. Of course, it's safe because no one really cares in Poland. They are still buying drugs or not.
Especially police.
Especially law enforcement agencies. They don't really care. And the users see this also. They are kind of course, we had this kind of more conscious users. Mostly of these users were not concerned about the safety. Basically, they saw this Telegram as being safe space. But we had some users that actually were more tech savvy, and they understood that Telegram is not that safe. But actually, I don't really care because police in Poland don't care. Police doesn't really care. They don't care about this. So it's of course there. Of course, it's also more about trust. And when it comes to trust, it's like this constant tension between this relational trust and technical trust. The technical trust, of course, relates to this technical affordances of Telegram. That it is being, you have to know the codes, you have to know this different substances name, the emojis, so it's technical. And relational is, of course, trust is also. It is also about that it's not that people don't like to have a vendor on Telegram, a channel that they use constantly, that they come back to. They also like to have these kind of relations with these. Some of our users, for example, stated that they are very fond of some of the sellers. They know the channel, it's reliable. They the quality is good, so they can like to come back. And for example, one of the interviewees stated that for one time I remember that my vendor was sick and he could not deliver. I was so sad. I like this guy. Again, it's kind of I kind of feel like this is kind of there is this theory of social supply in the drug trading literature. There is this social supply theory, and it relates to this old times how we buy drugs back in the past. Like that, we know these. Like I said, we know a guy from the guy. It's like social supply. It's within the circle. So I would say that this is similar in Telegram. Actually, there is this theory. There was this theory that because of the internet, people are moving beyond the social supply. But I wouldn't say it's true to a point. It's to some point it is, of course, true because it could be very fast, transactional. But for some users, this social supply is on different level. They like to kind of have this feeling that the vendor is there. It's hyper accessible. It's accessible. I can write. Maybe I will discuss some personal issues when I will meet him. Like this drugs traded. I don't know. I have some quotes here about this Telegram as a hub and hyper accessibility issues. I used to sort stuff out of different things, Telegram, Snapchat, Messenger, just depending on who was available at the time. I don't know how to put it. It was just like every dealer had a different way to contact them, so you end up having a bunch of apps. It's easier to back out here, so you can change your mind. Or on the flip side, if you're craving, you can always just hit someone up, and it gives you that kind of peace of mind, like you're already in touch with the dealer, even if you're not seeing them in person. You know they are there. So you know if you have your phone, you are safe. The substance, if you need, if you crave, you have it. In Warsaw, some guys, like my guy, for example, would do deliveries using an Uber package. This is the Hybridity, Uber package. So it worked like this. Say, you couldn't meet up with the guy, but you need the stuff. So they would go to an ATM, you give them a blink code so they can withdraw the amount of cash you agreed on, and then you order an Uber package to their address. They just give it to the Uber driver, and Uber would bring it over to you. So they use kind of a middleman, the Uber driver, to deliver. But it's a hybrid. So you are texting this person how much you need and what time you should be there. And here it is really up to what your relationship with the person is, how long you're cooperating with them. So this trust, they need these relations as well, this relational trust. And safety as constructed. Telegram is safer in that sense. It kind of stands above governments.
Legend.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, it kind of stands above governments, which is kind of not true for Russia now because they closed Russia Telegram, right? It's based in a country where there is no legal obligation to hand over chat logs to law enforcement. So in that way, it's more secure. I don't know where Telegram is based. Where is Telegram based? I don't know where there's Russia. It's based in a country where there's no legal obligation to hold. Yeah,
It's about the government.
It's about the government, yes.
The branch.
It's legally safe, but not necessarily safe from scammers.
Yes.
Okay, the scammers is also something I should probably mention. Because of course, I mentioned that there is this hyper accessibility, hybridity, and basically you just can easily order drugs and the people are perceive this as safe, but some of the users are very aware of the scammers. Because of course, on Cebulka, it's more secure in terms it's harder to scam someone because of these different mechanisms and features I mentioned. For Telegram, it's very easy. Actually, we have plenty of users that report scammers. So for example, they ordered the crystals, the methadone, and they received a glass, or they received a methadone mixed with glass. So when they snorted, they had their noses sore or something like this. So the scammers are there. They are basically aware because most of them, on some point, that they were scammed. Or you pay by Blink and no one comes. This is another, and this is why it's if you are buying drugs on Telegram, find these highly reliable hubs, channels that exist for a long time. Do not buy for these very ad hoc finds when this channels that exist only for 3-4 messages. It's risky. We switched to Telegram and basically stuck with it. We set it up, and so it's all encrypted. You know, I mean, I'm not an IT expert, so I don't really know if it's fully encrypted. But there's this little padlock, and the messages have that self-destruct timer. That's a secure measure. They destruct and self-destruct. So this is like this is secure. This is why this is secure. So of course, some of these users tend to be naive in terms of whether this is secure or not. This is another reason why we kind of juxtapose the Cebulka elite users with this kind of a regular, massive user that is basically buying drugs from Telegram. And plenty of these channels are basically scam channels, and you can see it in the data. If you are interested in these interviews, we kind of really elaborated on these issues in this paper that is very fresh, actually, from Deviant Behavior Journal, Dealing with Apps, Managing Access and Risk in Hybrid Drug Markets. So I highly recommend. Coming to an end, I would say that what is the next stage here? Probably some other messaging apps. I wouldn't say so. We kind of really wonder about this, and some of the users stated that they saw something on these more elaborate messaging apps like Simplex, Element, Signal. We actually did not find much there. Some sporadical, very sparse channels that offer drugs, but I wouldn't say it's massive. What else? TikTok. Despite some literature supporting drug trade or advertising on TikTok, we also did not find anything in Poland. Maybe we searched wrongly. Maybe it was like a poor search. I don't know. I wouldn't say. But perhaps, who knows? Just some sporadic profiles that we could suspect that they are related to drugs. But what about Tinder? Because Tinder is also an interesting case here. And we actually also wonder, because of press reports, because press journalists, they actually write about this all the time. For example, there is this article, I slipped through Tinder looking for everything but love. What happened when I tried not dating on Tinder? Of course, it was about drugs. And foreign press, US, English, UK press writes about trading drugs on Tinder. Polish press also reported nowy sposób na kupowanie narkotyków w sieci Tinder. Kind of wonder, is there something on Tinder? Of course, I might say that there are some dating apps that are about trading drugs as well. And there are some reports on people trading drugs on Grind, for example. But this usually relates chemsex. It's like combined. So it's for, of course, these people who use drugs and they also basically do sex. We had some interviews with gays also, but I won't discuss this today. Very interesting interviews. We specifically wanted to check Tinder. And we had like 2 research accounts. It had to be very transparent. For obvious reasons, always very ethical. So it's not that we could conceal our identities and pretend that we are looking for love or sex. And for real, we were searching for drugs. Of course, it's not that. So we were very transparent. We had these profiles that were highly transparent. We had this prowadzone naukowe badanie. We conducted scientific research. There was this description. What is the research about? We had premium accounts. It was not allowed to finance this in NCM. We had to spend our own money for it. And my partner was not happy. One of these research accounts was mine. She was not happy. But I explained it. Look, there is prowadzone naukowe badanie. I conduct research. Of course you are. So we tried to recruit, we changed the locations. This is why the Tinder premium allowed us to change locations from Warsaw to Gdańsk, Poznań to smaller cities. Maybe no one uses Tinder in Warsaw, but maybe in smaller cities people used to. So we tried to have some kind of a respondent, some kind of response from users that either buy, sell, or just stumbled on drugs. Not only just saw something that relates to drugs on Tinder. We also, at some point, after like 3 months perhaps of changing the descriptions, changing the photos from less professional to more professional. Once I was in a shirt, once I was in a t-shirt, on a hood, nothing worked, like nothing. So after 3 months, we also started to do recruitment posts on different social media like Facebook groups related to Tinder, dating apps, and so on. Yeah, to try to find people who saw something. And actually, this is the only way that we actually have some result. We did this was actually something that gave us something. But I would say that this is it, like 2 screenshots. These 2 screenshots, I tried to anonymize. I hope I did well.
Yes.
Yes. In the paper, this is being published now. This is also anonymized using the so-called penciling method. So this is like we draw it in pencil, right? So this is like the 2 photos we received from a user from Facebook who highlighted that he saw something like this, and he made some he made screenshots. But we asked him, what are the use, what are the locations, and so on. When did you do the screenshots? And he was silenced. He silenced. So he didn't respond. So this is it. This is something we received from a user from Facebook. Nothing there. Perhaps it's that we, of course, perhaps there are certain possible results here. It could be that people do not use Tinder to buy, trade drugs, discuss drugs. Of course, it's not like the prime issue or prime feature of Tinder, obviously. Of course, another thing is that this transparency could influence the results. This is kind of obvious. It could be that in terms of Tinder, the social supply is more important. The previously mentioned social supply. So close circles of people, perhaps maybe some friends who are matched now, right, from a long time. And of course, probably I would say that our methods were not perfect. Perhaps some other methods, like for example, diaries. So we would recruit people who used Tinder, and they would do some kind of diaries. They would observe, and if they see something that relates to substances, that they know this or something like this. We would probably need to maybe compare Tinder to Grindr, Bumble, so these very specific dating apps that we know are related to trading drugs. So why Grindr is more into it, and perhaps collaborating some organizations, of course, that tackle drugs. That we probably would do well to do something more here. But to be completely honest, we were so disappointed and fed up and did not pursue this. What we did is actually we did a paper on this, and it's been published in Crime Media Culture now. And it's a single author paper. It's my paper. And what I did is I kind of really saw this absence of data as data. So this is a methodological paper. That all these issues with this transparency, that we wanted to be so ethical, this could have been like a drawback actually at some point. But maybe this is why the non-response. This is why invisibility of findings. These are the reasons. This transparency, ethics, and of course there is this epistemic friction between this visibility, transparency, and this platform affordances, because of course these affordances are quite straightforward, whether you like people or not, whether you match them or not. So if you see someone Badania, it's obviously it's not approachable. It's not good for research. It will not work, right? So all these affordances create this epistemic friction, of course. So all these, basically what limited the knowledge here is like, this is the intersection, and it relates to platform, methods, ethics, transparency, and that's it. So concluding, I wanted to discuss the drug trade, but I must mention that this project is actually, because it's still an ongoing project, is much more broader. Actually, we are talking lots of stuff now. We are studying, basically, I would say, meanings that people attribute to psychedelic psychoactive substances users, especially, of course, the users are attributed to psychedelic substances in these online drug subcultures. We have plenty of papers now, we plan more. Some of these papers relate to quality of medical knowledge people have, quality of medical information people have. All these papers relate to the Hyperreal forum, this famous Polish forum on substances. We basically have millions of posts from Hyperreal, so we study quality of medical information on this Hyperreal. I would say that harm reduction, basically all these Cebulka, for example, Hyperreal, they are good for harm reduction. So it's better to have people who are discussing what are the effects of drugs, rather than people who are taking everything without any kind of reflection on this. So, but unfortunately, this study in Harm Reduction Journal, we showed that there is potential for harm reduction, but I would say that it's like analysis of posts, hundreds of thousands of posts, plus the expert psychiatrist evaluated selected posts. So I would say that people do discuss substances, and they relate these substances to specific medical conditions, for example. It's not an unusual thing. Like, for example, people who discuss, I would say, amphetamine, they mostly relate to cardiological issues. People who discuss fentanyl, they relate to palliative care, pain. People who discuss marijuana, cannabis, pain, depression, insomnia, such issues. It's really understandable. It's like, if you look at the medical journals, it's the same. But the quality of this information that is on the Hyperreal, I would say it's moderate. It's moderate. They are, in fact, quite good in relating to this evidence-based medicine, but they are, for example, mixing dosages or interactions. They do get interactions wrong. So I would say it's like a moderate quality of this information. We have related to fentanyl crisis, because of course it's like a popular case now. We have a paper with Paweł Matuszewski from Cebulka University in the International Journal of Drug Policy on opioid crisis, but we tackled it differently. We analyzed 20 years of history from Hyperreal and saw how the discussions on fentanyl, oxy, and different opioids evaluated over time. And we are discussing fentanyl crisis now. It started in the US, of course. And the press also reports on how many people die due to fentanyl abuse. But actually, for us, we don't believe it's true. It's more like a media moral panics. Actually, the discussions on fentanyl and other opioids decreases now on these forums. It's not that the ketamine is highly discussed, ketamine, but not fentanyl. We have some papers on medical cannabis. Also a very interesting topic at this point, because of Poland changes, obviously, slowly, but we are progressing in terms of how strict we are as a society, and in terms of how strict the law is in relation to substances. So we discussed this issue in Drugs Journal and Sociological Inquiry. I would say that when it comes to medical cannabis, people use forums to also kind of discuss this, but it's kind of really interesting that this medical usage, it kind of really intersects with this recreational usage. So medical cannabis is another way to just have access to legal marijuana. And people kind of really also approach this, you know, they want to cheat the system. Like they discuss the best possible clinics, best possible doctors that could give you easily. How to say to a doctor what is the best illness that you can pinpoint to have a medical cannabis. So they want to kind of have this kind of refracted publics. This is like the famous theory by Abedin, refracted publics, pure refracted publics. So it's highly public. Everybody discusses this, but they are refracted publics. So this is kind of between in between this legal theory and this kind of illicit cheating the system sphere. So we could say that medical cannabis is like it's useful, of course, but again, the users are discussing the qualities. Some of them perceive the quality differently. For some of them, the medical cannabis is too weak. For some of them, it's good. So it's very nuanced, I would say. And we also saw that when it comes to cannabis, marijuana, we also analyzed the trends. We analyzed 20 years of history on hyperreal. And back in like 20 years ago, marijuana cannabis was highly stigmatized. It's kind of obvious. So the users were very prized. We were prizing marijuana cannabis. Nowadays, when we have a more progressive society, despite the law being very strict, the discussions are more reflexive and nuanced. So people are more aware. They are more into proper usages. For example, do not smoke, but the vaping is better. Or I would say they are more reflexive in terms that you have to have some breaks from smoking. Or you go to a specialist, do some kind of medical examination that you are fine. So definitely more reflexive, and it progresses in relation to how progressive we are as a society in relation to marijuana and cannabis. Thank you.
It's I'm going to stop recording and let's open the floor for questions.
Now,
Stop.
Now we can talk.
are you good now?